In this chapter, we're going to design a Lego Technic part. Here is this part with 3 holes. To begin, you need to start by making a 2D sketch by clicking on the sketch tool, then selecting the reference plane. First, create the 2 circles. I click on the circle tool, click on the center of my drawing, and then define a circle. Next, I'll define a second circle. I press Escape to exit the menu, then press the Sketch Dimension key. This is used to add dimensions to my drawings. With the Sketch tool, I first click on the line, then move my mouse to position the dimension. I click again to enter the value of 7.8 millimeters in diameter. The same here. I click on the circle, then click a little further away, 7.8 millimeter. I press Escape. I want these 2 cylinders to be perfectly aligned with the original axis. To do this, I have constraint functions. I will constrain the center of my circle to this line. I have the coincident function. First, I click on the center of the circle, then on the red line, and my circle is positioned. I'm still missing a dimension. You can see here that some information is missing because this line is blue while the other one is black. When a sketch line is black, it means it is fully constrained, meaning it cannot move. I can try to click on it and try to move the element. It won't move. However, my blue line here, if I click on it, I can move it. So I will use the Sketch Dimension tool. I will select the 2 origins and set the dimension of 16 millimeters. I have created my 2 lines. Now I need to create lines on each side. So for that, I draw a first line here. I rely on the cylinder's edge. I draw a second line, also relying on the cylinder's edge. Here, my line is not straight. To straighten it, I can constrain it vertically or horizontally by clicking on this function. Then click on my line. It is now horizontal. I press Escape. I want this line to be tangent to my cylinder, so I will click on the tangent function. We would like to have the same line on the other side. For that, we have a mirror function. First, I select the line to move mirrored. Then by clicking here, I will select the symmetry line. My function is entirely black, so it is perfectly constrained. I can now exit my 2D sketch. Here is my sketch. I will now extrude it to create a 3D volume using the extrusion function. I will select the different profiles that will extrude and make a symmetric extrusion around the extrusion point to a distance of 4 millimeters. I click OK. I now have the beginning of my cylinder. Now I need to create the holes. So I will start with the first hole. For that, I will create a new sketch. I click on the sketch button to draw a hole. Several times you can use the top surface, or you can always rely on the reference plane seen here. That's what I'll do here. When it's difficult to select because the top surface of the part wants to be selected first, no problem. We go to the plane, to this section, and hold the left click until the small menu appears, which allows me to select the element I want. Here is the XY plane. Once in my sketch, I create a new cylinder here of 6.25 millimeters. Next, I'll create another cylinder. On this cylinder, I'll also set a dimension of 7.8. I have now created these 2 cylinders. I want to reproduce them a bit further because I'll use the rest of the drawing to duplicate the 2D sketch, which is perfectly doable. Just go to Create, then Rectangular Pattern, and Linear Pattern. Now I will define the sketches I want to repeat in the direction by taking, for example, either an origin axis or an element of my drawing. Now I see that the arrows are already well positioned, so we're good. And I can go in two possible directions. I will only go in one direction, making 2 repetitions at a distance of 8 millimeters. There, I have duplicated my 2 lines at a distance of 8 millimeters. I click OK. Once I've done that, I'll now create another line. One that will be dimensioned from the origin at 2.9. I mirror this line. We now know by selecting one last element, I will create a cylinder with a diameter of 5 millimeters here. I validate my sketch. Now I create the first extrusion that appears. You see the drawing in the middle of my part. I will extrude with this tool, select my 2 profiles here. Define a symmetric extrusion through the entire part. And here we see that since the extrusion starts from an already created volume, it defaults to removing material. What I could have done is join the material or suggested other functions, but cutting is exactly what I want, so it's what is proposed by default. This is perfect. I have now removed the material. When you validate this kind of element, the sketch disappears. It needs to be reactivated here. I will now do a second extrusion at its center, symmetrically, with a distance of 3 millimeters. This time, it's an object. I'm creating material that I want to join to what I've already made. I click. Okay, so now we can already see the final part starting to appear. Lastly, I will now extrude the central part here. To do this, I hold down the button and select my profiles while holding down the mouse. Be careful, I don't want it to be through and through. I want it to be blind at a certain point. So we'll offset the extrusion line, offsetting my extrusion start by 1 millimeter, and this time the distance is indeed through all. So here I'm removing the material but offset from my base sketch. Okay, I did it on one side. Now it must be done on the other side too. At this point, it is possible to use the mirror function to duplicate bodies. I select. Now I have several choices in the elements I want to mirror. It can be a body, a face, or a function that I've used. And indeed, the function is very practical. I just need to find the last extrusion I made, which is this one. Then the reference plane for my mirror, which will be this one. And there you see I clicked OK, and I've removed the material everywhere. All that's left is to hide my sketch and now duplicate my functions to make my parts with 3 holes. For that, at this point in the creation tool, I go to the pattern tool and then rectangular pattern. I'll make a first duplication, always selecting the functions here, very practical. And I'll select this function, which is the removal of material, and that one, which is the addition of material. I'll define the axis. I can take a line here that will allow me to define the axis, and there is a line on this axis. I'm going to define a duplication angle, a distance, and actually instead of giving a distance from end to end, I'll specify the spacing between 2 duplications. Finally, I set it to 8 millimeters. So between each hole, I have 8 millimeters. And that's what I want here. Okay, now I'm also going to apply the same elements for this material removal. so rectangular pattern. I will repeat the material removal and the mirror on the axis here. This time I repeat it twice. Spacing, set it to -8 millimeters since the arrow is reversed. And there you go. It's better positioned now. Okay, all I have to do is validate. And so I successfully made my part with 3 holes using the extrusion, sketching, dimensioning, and repetition functions. That will be useful later. We can also change its color now. It's gray, but I want it orange. Well, very well. I'll set it to orange. To do this, I'll just have to right-click on the type of my part, select Appearance, and there in the Appearance tools, I have many options provided by Fusion. Click on Fusion Appearance, which is the Fusion library, and then you can browse through the menus, such as the Paint section. There you have different types. If you open the Glossy menu, you'll find various types of paint. Let's say I choose red. Then I click on it and drag it into my favorites. If you see this small icon, it means you just need to click on it to download it. Now it's red. Currently, I don't want red, I want orange. I can modify the color by double-clicking on it. I say I want orange here. Let's shift a bit towards orange, and I'll name it orange. And it's down, so now you see I've changed it. All I have to do is specify that I want my whole body to be orange. I click on it, drag it into my part, and here it is in orange. I press close, here is my part. Don't forget to save it by clicking on the floppy disk icon.